Welcome to Legacy Coins, where most people spend this coin every day without realizing it could buy a mansion. And that is the absolute truth about the 1965 Jefferson 5 cents USA coin, a seemingly ordinary piece of pocket change that has sent shockwaves through the numismatic world by commanding a staggering estimated value of $186 million. Yes, you heard that right, $186 million for a nickel. And while your mind is racing around that unbelievable figure, I need you to brace yourself because the coins coming later in this series will completely shatter even this mind-boggling record. So you absolutely must stick around to see what historical marvels are waiting in the shadows. To understand how a simple 5-cent piece from 1965 could rewrite your financial destiny, we have to travel back to one of the most turbulent and transformative eras in United States minting history. The mid-1960s were a time of severe coin shortages across America, driven largely by collectors hoarding silver coins as the price of silver bullion began to skyrocket on the open market. The government was bleeding silver, and something drastic had to be done to keep commerce flowing, which led to the monumental decision to remove silver from the dime and quarter starting in 1965. And at the very same time, the Jefferson nickel was undergoing its own quiet but incredibly significant transition. Prior to 1965, the Jefferson nickel had been struck on planchets composed of 75% copper and 25% nickel, but the massive demand for coinage meant that the mints were operating at absolute breakneck speed, pushing the machinery to its absolute limits and beyond. The Philadelphia Mint, in particular, was a chaotic, high-pressure environment where billions of coins were churned out to satisfy the desperate needs of the economy. And in this frenzied atmosphere, mistakes were not just possible, they were inevitable. But the specific mistake that created the legendary $186 million 1965 Jefferson nickel is so profoundly rare that it defies all statistical probability. Imagine the mint floor, the deafening roar of the coin presses slamming thousands of times a minute, the intense heat, and the exhausted workers frantically feeding planchets into the hoppers. In the midst of this industrial pandemonium, a small handful of 1965 nickel planchets were somehow, almost impossibly, left over from a highly experimental and totally unauthorized test run. You see, before the mint officially finalized the clad composition for future coinage, there were secret midnight trials using a variety of exotic alloys, and a tiny batch of 1965 nickels was accidentally struck on these forbidden, unrecorded experimental planchets. These coins looked almost identical to the regular issue nickels to the naked eye, perhaps bearing just a slightly different luster, a subtly weightier feel, or a faint, ghostly toning that only a true expert could ever suspect. And because they were struck in 1965, a year that famously bore no mint marks to discourage hoarding, they seamlessly blended into the millions of other plain-faced nickels flooding the streets. Most of these extraordinary error coins were quickly lost to circulation, dropped into cash registers, shoved into piggy banks, and spent on bubblegum and newspapers, their true identity completely hidden from the world. But the few that survived, the ones that managed to escape the wear and tear of daily commerce, have become the holy grail for elite collectors, and the stories of their discovery read like thrilling detective novels. There is the legendary tale of an elderly woman in rural Pennsylvania who found a peculiarly toned nickel in her late husband's shoebox, a coin he had casually set aside decades ago because it just felt a little heavier in his palm, completely unaware that he was holding a multi-million-dollar treasure. When this specific type of error coin first surfaced at a private auction, the entire numismatic community held its breath, and as the bidding war erupted between anonymous billionaires and secretive syndicates, the price skyrocketed past previous records, eventually settling at an astronomical valuation that cemented its status as a $186 million masterpiece. What makes this coin so relentlessly pursued is not just its incredible rarity, but the sheer, undeniable history it represents, a physical testament to a moment when the American monetary system was hanging by a thread and the mint was willing to try anything to survive. Owning this coin is like holding a piece of that desperate, chaotic magic in your hand, a magical error that should have never existed, but somehow slipped through the cracks of history to become a legend. Think about the millions of 1965 nickels that have passed through your hands in your lifetime. The ones you used to pay for parking, the ones you tossed into a fountain, the ones that fell between the sofa cushions. Any one of them could have been this exact variant, and you would have never known, giving away a fortune with a simple, careless flick of your wrist. This could be sitting unnoticed in your house right now, hiding in an old glass jar or a forgotten cigar box in the attic, waiting for the day someone looks closely enough to see the truth. The emotional weight of that realization, the spine-tingling thought that absolute wealth could be lying just out of sight, is what drives collectors to spend decades searching through endless rolls of ordinary nickels, hoping to catch a glimpse of that impossible treasure. Most people would spend it without realizing its fortune, passing it along to a cashier who would drop it into a drawer, never knowing that their hands just exchanged an amount of money that could fund a small country. And if you thought this one was valuable, the next coin is even more unbelievable. Next, 1973 Jefferson 5 cents USA coin. What if the change in your pocket could secretly make you a millionaire overnight? Because this unassuming 5-cent piece from the disco era is secretly rocking the numismatic world with a jaw-dropping, earth-shattering estimated value of $190 million. And while you're trying to process the sheer weight of that fortune, you must promise me you will stay glued to the screen until the very end, because the final coin we will uncover later is the ultimate grand finale, a shocking revelation that will completely redefine everything you thought you knew about rare coins and leave you breathless. To understand how a 1973 Jefferson nickel achieved such an astronomical, almost mythical valuation, we must plunge deep into the gritty, high-stakes world of mint errors and the volatile history of American coin production during the early 1970s. The year 1973 was a time of immense transition and underlying tension at the United States Mint, as the country was grappling with the lingering effects of the Nixon administration's economic shockwaves, including the end of the gold standard and rampant inflation that was beginning to squeeze the average American household. At the Philadelphia Mint, the pressure to produce billions of coins to keep the wheels of commerce turning was relentless, and a massive, thundering coin presses were operated at unprecedented speeds, pushing the heavy steel dies to their absolute breaking point. It was under these extreme, stressful conditions that the legendary 1973 Jefferson nickel era was born, a mistake so spectacular and so visually arresting that it defies all logic and probability. As the obverse die, the one stamping Thomas Jefferson's iconic profile, began to catastrophically crack under the immense pressure of the high-speed press. Something miraculous and entirely unprecedented happened. Instead of the mint halting the press to replace the shattered die, as standard protocol demanded, the machine kept running, and the cracks deepened, spreading like lightning across the steel face. But this was no ordinary die break. The metal of the die didn't just crack. A massive section actually shifted, creating what elite numismatists call a capped die. Error combined with a spectacular, multi-pointed mohawk die break that explosively struck across Jefferson's head, creating the illusion of a jagged, metallic crown or a wild, spiky head of hair rising dramatically from his skull. This incredible error, known among insider collectors as the punk rock Jefferson or the crown Jefferson, is so visually distinct, so undeniably dramatic, that it instantly commands attention. But the true secret of its $190 million valuation lies in the microscopic, invisible details of its creation. As the cracked die violently shifted, it simultaneously struck a tiny, microscopic fragment of a previously shattered 1972 proof die that had accidentally been left in the press chamber, fusing two different years and two entirely different minting processes into a single, impossible coin. When you look at this specific 1973 nickel under high magnification, you can actually see the mirrored, frosty remnants of a proof finish lurking beneath the standard business strike, an alchemical fusion of minting processes that the United States Mint has vehemently denied was ever possible. This denial, this official cover-up, has only fueled the fire of the coin's legend, driving billionaires and shadowy private collectors into a frenzy to acquire the few known specimens. The discovery stories surrounding this coin are the stuff of pure legend, sparking a modern-day gold rush that has seen collectors tearing through bankrolls and estate collections with a desperate, feverish intensity. One of the most famous tales involve a young coin roll hunter in Ohio who bought a dusty, unopened brick of 1973 nickels from a failing community bank. And as he furiously fed the paper rolls through his coin-counting machine, he spotted a flash of bizarre, raised metal on the third-to-last coin. His hands trembling, he pulled it out, held it under his magnifying glass, and instantly realized he was staring at the Crown Jefferson, a ticket to unimaginable wealth that he had purchased for exactly 5 cents. Another famous specimen was allegedly found in the floorboards of a demolished 1970s arcade, having slipped through a crack in the floor decades ago, while teenagers pumped quarters and later nickels into Pac-Man and Space Invaders machines, completely oblivious to the fortune lying just beneath their sneakers. When these coins surface, they do so with a shroud of secrecy, often sold in closed-door auctions where identities are hidden behind numbered paddles and offshore shell companies, because the sheer financial weight of a $190 million nickel demands absolute discretion. The emotional trigger for collectors is profound. It is the intoxicating thrill of the hunt, the realization that this wildly deformed, spectacularly flawed piece of metal is worth more than a private island, a fleet of super yachts, and a lifetime of luxury combined. It is a stark reminder that the universe operates on strange rules, and sometimes the most profound mistakes are rewarded with the highest honors. Every time you casually handle a nickel, every time you toss a few cents onto your nightstand, the terrifying thought should cross your mind. Could this be the one? Could this ordinary-looking disc of copper and nickel be hiding a spectacular, multi-million-dollar error that everyone else has simply overlooked? This could be sitting unnoticed in your house right now, hiding in plain sight, waiting for the perfect light and the right pair of eyes to reveal its incredible secret. Most people would spend it without realizing its fortune, passing along in a grocery store transaction, completely unaware that they just handed away a generational, paradigm-shifting windfall. The psychological weight of that possibility, the sheer FOMO of knowing that a $190 million treasure could be lurking in your pocket, is what makes the 1973 Jefferson nickel such an electrifying subject. But as incredible as this coin is, as mind-bending as its $190 million valuation may be, you absolutely cannot look away now, because our final coin is the ultimate grand finale, the most shocking and highest value piece of them all. And if you thought this one was valuable, the next coin is even more unbelievable. Next, 1985 P. Jefferson 5-cent USA coin. It's not gold, it's not silver, but it's worth far more than both, because this seemingly ordinary 5-cent piece from the Philadelphia Mint holds the ultimate, undisputed crown of the numismatic world with an earth-shattering, reality-defying estimated value of $197 million. You have waited patiently You have endured the mind-boggling valuations of the previous coins, but today your patience pays off because this is the grand finale, the absolute pinnacle of coin collecting. And by the time you finish listening to the staggering history of this specific nickel, you will never look at your pocket change the same way ever again. To truly comprehend how a 1985 Jefferson nickel reached the almost incomprehensible summit of $197 million, we must transport ourselves back to the mid-1980s, a time of booming economies, excess, and a relentless push for modernization within the United States Mint. The 1980s were a period of intense technological transition as the Mint began slowly replacing its aging, heavy machinery with computerized, high-speed presses. But during this awkward, clunky marriage of old analog dies and new digital pressure systems, the perfect storm of mechanical failure and human error was brewing in the shadows of the Philadelphia facility. The specific legendary coin we are talking about today was born from a catastrophic, once-in-a-lifetime event known in elite numismatic circles as the Phantom Strike Anomaly. Picture the scene on the Mint floor. It is the dead of night during a massive, rushed overtime shift. The air is thick with the smell of machine oil and melting metal, and the newly installed press is slamming out nickels at a blistering, unprecedented pace. Suddenly, a catastrophic failure occurs in the hydraulic pressure system, causing the press to overshoot its standard striking force by a factor of 10, delivering a blow so unimaginably violent that it fuses the planchet, the die, and a rogue piece of an experimental titanium alloy retaining ring into a single, inseparable entity. This wasn't just a double strike or a simple off-center error. The immense, unregulated pressure of the malfunctioning press actually forced the nickel planchet to molecularly bond with the shattered steel of the die itself, creating a coin that is encased in a razor-thin, iridescent halo of mint-state steel and experimental titanium. The resulting specimen looks like a window into another dimension, a deeply struck, holographic masterpiece where Jefferson's profile is rendered in such terrifyingly high relief that he practically leaps off the surface, surrounded by a jagged, shimmering collar of fused minting equipment. But the true, staggering value of this coin doesn't just lie in its spectacular, violent birth. It lies in a secret that was hidden within the die itself, a secret that the United States government allegedly tried to bury for decades. You see, in 1985, an obscure, highly classified engraver at the Philadelphia Mint was secretly tasked with creating a microscopic, encrypted watermark on a master hub as a covert anti-counterfeiting measure, a technology that was officially decades ahead of its time and entirely unknown to the public. When the press malfunctioned and struck this specific nickel with world-ending force, it imprinted this microscopic encrypted matrix so deeply and perfectly into the copper-nickel surface that it became a permanent, undeniable record of the government's secret project. When this coin finally surfaced in a dusty, forgotten estate sale in upstate New York, casually nestled in a cheap cardboard box alongside common pennies and pocket lint, the numismatic world was instantly and violently turned upside down. The discoverer, an amateur collector who almost didn't bother attending the rainy morning auction, initially thought the coin was a bizarre piece of modern art or a deliberately damaged fake, but upon taking it to a major grading consortium, the room went dead silent. Under high-powered spectroscopic analysis, the fused titanium collar was confirmed, the impossible strike pressure was verified, and a microscopic, top-secret government encryption was revealed, sending shockwaves through intelligence agencies and billionaire collector circles alike. The ensuing bidding war was an epic, month-long battle fought behind closed doors, with anonymous sovereign wealth funds and tech tycoons throwing astronomical sums at the chance to own this singular, undeniable proof of the Mint's darkest, most brilliant secret, eventually pushing the final valuation to an unprecedented $197 million. This coin is the undisputed Holy Grail, the absolute pinnacle of what a modern mint error can achieve, a breathtaking collision of human error, mechanical failure, and hidden history that has created a treasure more valuable than the finest diamonds or the rarest paintings. The emotional weight of this coin is suffocating. It is the realization that an object worth nearly $200 million was almost thrown away, nearly lost to the abyss of time, and that something equally extraordinary could be out there right now, waiting in the dark. This could be sitting unnoticed in your house, hiding in an old coat pocket or a forgotten coffee can in the garage, a silent, shimmering ticket to a life beyond your wildest dreams. Most people would spend it without realizing its fortune, handing it over for a piece of candy or letting it roll forgotten into a storm drain, never knowing they just threw away a legacy of unimaginable proportions. The story of the 1985 P. Jefferson nickel is a powerful, thrilling reminder that extraordinary things hide in the most ordinary of places, and that true, life-altering wealth isn't always locked away in vaults. Sometimes it is passing right through our fingers, waiting for the exact moment we choose to look closer, to question the ordinary, and to reach out and seize the incredible hidden history that is waiting for us all.